All right, welcome one, welcome all to another stream here. This is another Turner made video, and I'm going to be taking a look at creating an asset from a game, recreating the effect of that asset in a game. And what I'm going to be recreating here is a prop from popular game Borderlands, and I'm going to be creating this inside of Unreal. I'm going to be blueprinting this, wiring it all up so that the prop actually functions, and we want to recreate that functionality that you find inside of Borderlands. And so that's kind of the goal here. That's what I'm going to be doing. I've already got the modeling done. I didn't want to bore too many people with some modeling details here, so I've gone ahead and modeled the high poly, low poly version of my chest, and I've gone ahead and textured this thing as well. And the first thing that I want to do is to kind of highlight what I've done with the textures. And the reason for this is that I'm going to have some very specific things happen with this chest when you activate it inside of the game. So the goal here is that I want to make it so that you walk up to the chest, you click on it, or you hit, a button to activate the chest. The chest will open. You can see I've got a very quick, crude animation here. I've just got the lid's pivot point here inside of the hinge, and I've just got a 10-second animation here. A 10 frame animation of that lid opening. So it's pretty rudimentary. It's really simple. But the goal here is to have that lid open once you activate it. And then the chest stays open permanently, so it doesn't close again. This is kind of what you see inside of Borderlands in regards to their loot chests. Now, one of the other things that they've done inside of Borderlands with the loot chests is that they have it so that you can identify when a chest can be opened and cannot be opened. And so I'll kind of show you this here. If I Google this on another video, and we go take a look at what these chests look like in game. So one of the key identifiers inside of Borderlands is this green color that you see on each and every one of these chests. And what this is this is an indication that this chest can be opened. This is kind of like the green means go, come and get it kind of thing. However, once you've opened a chest, all of those green lights kind of turn red, indicating that the chest can no longer be opened, and you lose the green glow that's on here. So you can see they use, regardless as to what the design of the chest is, and in some of them, the weapons crates are obviously based off chests, but there's all kinds of things that they use this on, like there are mailboxes in the game that mailbox has the same little green on it. There are washing machines, and you'll see the same thing on the whoops, if I can spell it correctly. You'll see the same thing on the washing machine where there's green on it here when it can be activated. And then again, once you open it up, that green turns red and you lose the ability to activate it. And so this is kind of a one deal thing. This is a prompt that needs to beckon users, saying, look, come on over here, come see what I've got. And that green color is supposed to be inviting. Once you open and activate the chest, you then lose that green and the chest stays open and locked permanently. So this is the goal for what we're doing here. Now, if I were to go and take a look at the textures here that I've made for this, just to kind of show you my thinking in advance here and how I've prepped this. Again, I'm not going to bother with any of the creation of the chest in terms of the texturing or the modeling or any of that. That's some pretty standard stuff. There are two textures that I want to show you, and they are these two here. So this is my base color for my chest. You'll notice I've got some, there's some graffiti on here, and there's some red paint, and there's some gray areas. But the areas that I want to call your attention to are these white spots. Now, these white spots which you can see have dirt on them. You know, they're not just purely white. But, you know, there's kind of grunge and stuff going on. So these white areas are the areas on my chest that are going to be lit up. And you can see there's another little one over here, and another little one over here. So these are the areas on the chest that are going to glow. I've tried to place them on all 3 sides and the top of the chest, or all 4 sides and the top of the chest, so that you can see that green glow from wherever the chest is located in the engine and you know, or in the game, in the level. And that's, you know, a fairly important part of this, is you want to make sure that players can see it from regardless as to what direction they're approaching this thing from. And so the reason for this white color is that the color of the glow is going to be dynamic. Right, this is going to be something we're going to do in the engine. So I don't want to paint the green glow, nor do I want to paint the red glow, because if I do that, I'm not going to be able to remove it. You know, it's going to be just that. It is going to be stuck in that mode kind of thing. And so by painting it white, and you'll see over here, I have this other image, which you can see lines up with my glow areas here, and this is just a hot or not glow on this map. In fact, I can see a couple of areas here that probably could get painted with black here as well. There's a couple little hot spots here. This is from the padding, but you can see what this is this is just a glow map, and again, using just that white color. And so these are the most important images in getting this set up correctly. Now, when I did this inside of Substance Painter, what I did was I textured this. And when I textured it, I obviously painted these things white. And I exported out my textures, which is what we have here. And then I redid the texture again. I could have done this with an emissive inside of Substance Painter. But what I did instead was I went in and just repainted this to give myself a just a black and white image. What's up, guys? Welcome to the stream. And so now these 2 images are going to be brought into the engine here, and they're going to be used as the means for texturing. And so I've actually got 6 textures on this thing, only because I made a mistake that I didn't want to correct afterwards, which was the inside of the chest. I didn't texture the bottom plate. I actually made a mistake when I unwrapped it, and so I just went through a second texture on there. So not the end of the world. Ideally, this should all be one in one material ID. Now, as I mentioned, there's an animation on this. Okay. This is just the chest opening. Now, you want this animation to be fast enough that, you know, a player's not sitting there waiting for the chest to open. That, you know, you click it and it kind of just pops open. And even that might be a little bit slow, but that's okay. We can tweak the speed in the engine if we find it is overly slow. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this out as an FBX. I'm going to make sure I have the whole thing, and we're going to export selected, and I'm going to make sure that the animation comes with it. So we're going to go to the right folder here, desktop. We'll go to Turner Made. We'll go and find the meshes in here. We'll go find the chest in here. And again, I want this to be an FBX. And there's my FBX, and we'll just export over that. And again, I want to make sure that I am including the animation here, that it is exporting that as well. Inside of the engine, when we go in here and we import that into the engine, you can see that I've already gone ahead and imported it. It's coming in as a skeletal mesh, and this is important. If you, I didn't put any bones in this rig, I just keyframed the lid opening. So when you import this, and I'll show you what I mean, you're going to need to make sure that this thing actually is, we'll go to meshes, chest low. You're going to make sure, yeah, that's not going to work. Let me try this in another folder here. Chest low. So you need to make sure that skeletal mesh is ticked off. And what that's going to do is it's going to make sure that it brings this in as a mesh that can be animated, and I'm importing the animation as well. Okay, so those are the two most important parts when importing this. Now, when you import it, you're going to end up with 4 files here that come in. First is the actual mesh, the skeleton, and this is just based off of how we rooted things and how we, merge things together. A physics asset, and then the animation. So the physics asset, if we go and take a look at what this is here, I've actually gone and made some changes to this physics asset. In fact, let me go and reset up this whole thing here so that you can see the entire process. So I'm just going to grab these whole things here and we'll delete them, or you know what I'll do is I'll leave them in here, but I'll go and make a new folder called chest 2 and I'll just import them in here. So import, we'll go grab chest low again. Skeletal mesh. I want to make sure that the animations are brought in, and I'll hit import. Okay, so there are now, and you can see it actually tried to make 2 materials as well, which I'll delete. I could have actually made sure that that was turned off in the settings as well. These materials are just based off the material IDs that you find on that mesh. So we'll let this delete here. It's going to chug along as it builds some shaders. And now we can go take a look at what came in. So here's my mesh. Here's the skeleton, the chest, the lid, and there's actually some cylinders on the side here. And you'll see that the lid has its pivot point in the right place. Now there's the mesh. And then here's the animation of the lid opening, which is beautiful. Now you'll notice that while I only made this this animation 10 frames, you can see that the animation actually kind of keeps going towards the end. That's fine. I'm not worried about that. I could have trimmed the animation inside of 3ds Max before exporting it. For something as small as this, I'm not going to worry too much about it. And then lastly, we have our physics asset. Now, this is what I changed in the original one. So you'll notice when you bring a physics asset in, or when Unreal creates a physics asset out of a skeletal mesh, I get all of these capsules here, what they call cylinders, and they're, kind of useful. They are really kind of used for creating physics assets for characters. And so, you can kind of picture this being the body of a character, and maybe this is the limb or whatnot. And I actually don't really want any of these. And so we're going to go and delete those. So I'll grab this one and delete it, and this one and delete it, and this one and delete it, all the way through until I just have my asset here. I don't really need the physics asset for what I'm going to be doing. We're going to recreate the collision here in a different way that'll be important as well later. So those are now the components that we just brought in. The next thing we have to do is we need to set up this material. And this is going to be a little non-standard. It's going to be, still pretty straightforward, but not your typical texture. So first things first, I'm going to go and grab my 6 textures here, and I'll bring them into the game, or into the engine. You can see I didn't name anything correctly either, which is why I have things called Lambert 1. I did my UVs inside of Maya, so that's where that name's coming from. Again, pretty bad form here on my part. I probably should have named these things and made it a little bit more accurate, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. Now, let's go make sure that Unreal has correctly identified what these textures are. So I want to make sure that my normal maps are set to normal map. That one is, and that one is, which is good. And then I also want to make sure that my ARM maps also have the sRGB turned off. If you don't do this by default, Unreal won't render your mesh in the way that you expected, or the way that you saw it in Substance Painter. Now, I've actually had several of these ARM maps from Substance Painter come in from Substance Painter and actually be set up absolutely correctly, which is kind of a beautiful thing. Okay. So, there's our textures. Let's go back into the chest area here. We're going to make a new material. And let's call this chest. Let's start with demo, because this will make it easier to find them later. So demo chest 1, or chest out, because I have an interior here as well that's going to need editing. So inside of this material, which I'm just going to dock up here, I'm going to go into my textures, and we'll grab, since this is the outer, the 4 textures that I'm using for the outer. So we're going to go into chest and plug these in here. So a couple of these can be set up in a way that is going to make a lot of sense. The ARM, we can put the red into the A, the green into the R, and the blue into the M. So that's now set up correctly. And I'm going to plug the normal map in as well. And those 2 textures are done correctly. I really don't need to do anything else with those. The next thing that I want to do is set up the color, the base color, and I'm actually going to be using emissive color here. That's how I'm going to be doing the light, that green glow that we get on this asset, and actually the red glow to that effect as well. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start off with 2 constant 3s, and these are going to be the colors of the light. So to keep things simple, we'll just make it 1 and 1 for those 2 colors. So we should have green and red. I'm going to create a linear interpolation between these, and this is going to allow me to swap back and forth between these things in a pretty simple way. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to create a parameter here called switch, and I'll plug this into the alpha. So now, whatever value our scalar parameter has will allow me to bounce back and forth between these 2 colors. The next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that where I'm putting this glow only finds itself on the lights. And that's what the mask here is going to be for. So if I take the mask and I multiply it, and we plug the answer of our linear interpolation into this, to kind of run you through what this math is doing. So this mask is only made up of black and white areas, and a few that are kind of in between. And what you're going to get is black has a value of 0, and so anything we multiply by 0 will remain 0. That means that anything that's black in this image at the end of the multiply will remain black. Anything that is white, which is a value of 1, when we multiply, will retain its original value, aka the color that we have chosen. So that's what this does. It kind of gives us the ability of eliminating that glow from other parts of this map. So cool. Now that we have that, we want to be able to tweak how bright this color is. So we'll just multiply it again, and I'm going to put a scalar in here, and we'll call this scalar, let's see, brightness. And I'll plug this into here. Now we want to give this a value that is not 0 by default. I don't know how bright we want to make this. Let's try 3 out of the gate. We can always come back and edit this down the road. So there's the brightness. This is going to go into our emissive channel. Now what we should see here, once this is plugged in, even without our color being applied, we should see the green glow on this asset, which is what we're looking for. And to show you how this works, if we change the switch to 1, that green glow should become red. So there we go. So beautiful. The switch works, and it allows us to swap back and forth between our 2 colors. Again, I need to give it a default value of 0. We want the chest to be inviting when you first see it, so nice and green. And that's now plugged into the emissive. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to plug this into our color here, too. I want to have this color value here not only associated with the glow, but I would like to have it inside of our base color as well. So I'm just going to add this to the RGB, and we'll plug that into the base color value. Now, it's not going to change this tremendously, especially with the emissive set 3 times brighter than it should be. We probably won't even notice that much change in that area. It's just something that I kind of like to do. And so there. So that is now the material built for the outside of the chest. So I'll just zoom out here so you can see all this. Not entirely expensive here. It's a fairly cheap thing to do. Again, the only thing that's really changing anything is going to be this switch that we can flip back and forth. Now, depending on the complexity of the asset that you're making, if you want to do this kind of thing, there's all kinds of really cool things that you can do with this. You know, instead of just having this be, a single color here that you see, you could build pulsating into this, and you could build flickering, if the lights are not working properly. There's all kinds of really cool things like that you can do. But since I'm mimicking what the chests in Borderlands do, I want this that solid green color and nothing fancy. All right. I'm going to save this material, and we'll close our material. Now we don't need it. And let's go back into our chest folder, and we're going to assign that material here to this guy here. So material 1, I'm just going to type demo, and there's demo chest out. And we should see this appear in the right area here. And we should get what looks like a finished chest. While that's thinking about its life, let's hop over. There we go. So there's the finished chest with the green glow on it. Again, I've kind of put these lights in enough areas here that we can kind of see this from everywhere. I haven't placed any in the back, but that's okay. Because again, you probably want to have this thing up against a wall or something like that, so you can see it from all three sides. I'm going to pop over into the materials here again, and I'm going to create another material. This one is going to be for the interior, so I'll call it demo chest interior. And this one's going to be a little bit simpler. This one is just going to contain these three textures. Nothing fancy. I don't need to script anything here. I only just need to get these in the right place. So there's my base color, my normal, and the ARM, which again I'll plug into A, R, and M. And we'll build this material. Again, I don't need to do anything fancy here. This material on its own, like this, is really all you need. So there's that material there. So, yeah, I'll close that. And here we're going to use demo, and there's material chest interior. Which we won't see until the chest opens, unless I go get the camera inside here. The material's not built, but when it is, it should texture that interior. Now, very important here when you're doing your texturing inside of Substance Painter on something like this. So there's that interior color. When I did my ambient occlusion maps, my bakes inside of Painter, I made sure that I was baking only from the mesh that the texture was for. So what that meant was that the lid didn't cast an ambient occlusion shadow on the inside of this box, which is hyper important. Otherwise, when the box opens, it's going to be really, really dark in there. And so, I've gone and gotten rid of that. Okay. Now that we've got that set up, the next thing that we want to do is we need to set up two things. The first thing is we need to set up a blueprint that we can use to place these chests around the level. A couple of things need to happen inside of the blueprint, which are going to be creating a dynamic material for the blueprint, and then also setting up what happens when the chest is selected. The other thing that we need to do is add the interactivity component of this, and that's actually going to go in the player blueprint. And we're going to need to affect that so that the player actually has the ability to select things. Now, in this world here, if I go and hit play, I'm going to try not to fire because it's going to be really, really loud. I'm still in my Turner-made map here that has some of our other things that we've played with. I've got my vertex painting over here. I've got my my wall over here that when I run into this, it wobbles. And I've also got a shader on this character here that allows me to enter this kind of ghost mode on her. So these are all assets I've done in previous videos, which you're more than welcome to go check out. So let's work on the blueprints first of all. So I'm going to make the chest blueprint here. I'm going to go create a blueprint class. And this is going to be an actor. It's going to be something that lives in our world. And I'm going to call it BP underscore Borderlands, BL, chest, like so. And we're going to open up that blueprint. And here we have our world, which is good. I'm going to go and just dock this over here. So, chest low. This is the asset that we want to bring in. Again, this is the skeletal mesh. Okay, so I'm going to go and add a component, skeletal mesh, chest low. It's going to use the one that I had selected here, which is really quite nice. So there's our chest inside of the blueprint. I'm going to make the chest the new scene root here. And this is kind of important because it's kind of the main object here. I don't need that little white sphere for placement. You know, the chest is on the ground, and it's the object that we're going to be interacting with. And so, by making it the main component here for this blueprint, it's just going to make life a little bit easier. So first things first, let's talk about the construction script. The construction script is something that happens when this object is built. So when this object is constructed, this script runs. So this is when you place it in the world. This is when you move it wherever it's going to be in the world. This is when you duplicate it. Every one of those instances in which this thing is being built, the construction script runs. So what I want to set up in the construction script is I want to make sure that this thing is creating its own texture, its own set of materials. Now, why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that because when this object lives in the world, like this, and there's another one right beside it, if I don't create a dynamic material instance, when the user or the player goes over and goes and selects one of these things, the texture on both of them will edit, which is not what we want. Ultimate Bot 3000, welcome to the stream here. And no, this is not pre-recorded, dude. I am live, and I'm going to town on this thing. And so yeah, if you got questions along the way, fire them off. So that's why we're going to create a dynamic material instance, so that each time we place one of these things in the world, each one of them kind of has its own version of this texture. That way, each chest can open and its light can turn red without affecting all of the other ones in the world. So I'll just delete those from the world. We're going to go back in here. And the way that we're going to set this up is coming outside of our construction script. We are going to create a dynamic material instance for the chest. Okay, so there's our asset. Now, let's take a look at what this node does. So the target is which object is going to get the dynamic material instance. We've got the element index, and what this is what material ID. Now, if you remember on our chest here, we've actually got two of them, an interior and an exterior. And if I go and look at the actual mesh here, you'll notice that the first one is the exterior. That's the one we want to edit. So that's 0, and the next one is 1. So here's element 0 and element 1. And that's what those things relate to. So element index 0 means that first material. So when I go and edit this thing, when I go and make changes to it, that's what's going to be changing. The next thing is the source material. So this is the material that you want to make an instance of. So if we go in here and I type demo, here's the demo chest out. That's our exterior material. So there we go. That is going to create a new material instance for that guy. Lastly, I'm just going to promote this to a variable, like so, and I'll call that variable Dynamat. for dynamic material. And that's all we need in the construction script. So now if I compile this, and we shouldn't get any errors, now every time one of these blueprints is brought into the world, it's going to create a new instance of that material. So it's not going to affect every other chest in the world. We're going to get just a single effect on this chest, and it alone will be edited. So that's all we need in the construction script. This is going to build our chest the way that we want and create a new material for it. You'll notice over here in our variables, we do have a dynamat, which is this guy that was just made. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the event graph. Now, the event graph is how we're going to add the functionality to this thing. So that's telling it what to do when we want it to change. So there are two things that we need to happen. First, we need the animation to play, and second, we need to swap the color from green to red. By default, when you go into an event graph, you're going to see these three nodes here. Event begin play. That node is going to fire off when your game engine hits play, so that's not what we want to do. I can delete that one. The next one is event actor begin overlap. This happens when something bumps into your mesh. Well, that's not when we want the chest to open either, so we can delete that one. And then tick happens every time a frame is drawn. So, you know, something like 30 times a second or 60 times a second, depending on the frame rate of your game. Also, not very useful in this instance. So I can delete that. Now, there are many kinds of events that you can use in terms of how this thing is going to work. In fact, if we select the chest and go down to the bottom of its details, here are all the events that we can use just on that chest. So, constraint is broken, anim initialize, component is hit. There's a whole bunch of things that we can do here. And as it turns out, none of those are going to be correct either. We want to use interaction as our means of this thing going. So the way the interaction is going to work is it's actually going to take place in a different blueprint, and that blueprint is going to talk to this blueprint and say, hey, time to do that thing I wanted you to do. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a custom event. This custom event we can call opened chest. So there, we now have an event called opened chest. Now, this is just a string of characters. The engine has no idea that this actually has anything to do with a chest opening. I'm just calling it this because it will make a little bit more sense when we get into the character blueprint and we want this thing to go and change. So now that we have that part ready to go, the next thing that we have to do is we have to go and actually tell it what to do. So we have to play the animation. We have to change the material color. And there's one more thing that we need to do. And here's how that works. What happens if a user walks over to this chest and wants to open it, but it's already been opened? We need a means of being able to tell the engine that this chest can or cannot be opened. You know, true or false. A true or false in terms of scripting inside of a blueprint like this is something called a Boolean. And we can go and create a new variable here. I'm going to go create. This is going to be a Boolean, and I'm going to name this in a way that makes it easy to figure out the true or false. I'm going to name this can be opened. Question mark. When I do that, I now have something called can be opened. Question mark. When you phrase it as a question like this, it becomes a little bit easier to track the true or false in what this bool does. So, I'm going to pull this bool out, and we're going to just get its value. Let's go take a look at what its default value is. I'm going to compile so that we can edit this. Here's the default value for this. Can be opened? No. Or yes. Well, the default value should be yes. This chest can be opened. Let's take a look at how we're going to choose whether or not we can actually do anything based on whether or not this is true or false. To do that, I'm going to create a node called a branch. And the branch is just going to check the validity of our bool. it's going to return an answer, true or false. Now, we can do anything with these two pins. We can actually fire off in two different directions. So really good examples of things that we can do are, well, we can play our animation when this thing gets fired off, if true. If the chest can be opened, then cool, play the animation, open the chest, give the player the loot. The second thing is that the false can play a sound effect, something like a, sorry, you can't open this, some kind of negative noise to let the player know that this thing has been interacted with, but it's not going to do the thing that you want it to do. So you can actually plug these two things into two separate chains now, and have them do things that you want them to do that way. Next, I'm going to, out of this branch, let's tell it what to do. I'm going to grab my chest, and I'm going to tell the chest to play animation. So when true, let's play the animation on our chest. I'm going to put this above the play animation, as those things are part of the same group here. Next, we need the anim to play. And so I'm going to play the chest low animation. And I don't want this to loop. That would probably be a bad thing. Otherwise, the lid will open. After it stays open for a certain amount of time, it'll snap closed and open again, which is not the functionality we want here. In Borderlands, the chests open. They stay open, and they are open forever once they've been edited. And so that's kind of what we want to do here as well. The next thing we need to do is we need to change the scalar parameter that we are editing to change our color. So if you remember back on our material, this node here, switch, which is responsible for changing the color, is what we need to edit. So I'm going to pull out from this pin. So after we've played the animation, let's go and set scalar parameter value. And this is going to be on chest low again. Now, I don't need this second node here. I can actually just plug the first one into both of these things. Now, what is the value or the name of the parameter we're going to change? And it was called switch. And you want to be careful here. This is case sensitive. So I'll make sure that I'm naming things the right way. And then what is the value we want to give that new switch? Well, by default, it's set to 0. That's green. And when the switch is set to 1, eventually, when it's set to 1, we should see red appear. Eventually. There it is. So when it's 1, we see the red. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to change that value of switch to 1. So again, I'll let this compile. There we go. I'll head over here, and I'm going to give it a new value of 1. Not 0.1, 1. So now, once the chest is open, let's follow through what the script is doing. When we call the open chest, let's check to see if we're allowed to open the chest. If we are allowed, can be opened, is true. Then let's play the animation of the chest opening. Let's change the color of the light from green to red. And there's one more thing that we need to do. That last thing that we need to do is tell the chest that now it can't be opened. So let's take our can be opened and let's set its value. Here, we're going to set its value to not checked, false. That means that the chest can no longer be opened, which means the next time that this fires off, it's going to hit the branch and not do anything. So there, we've just added in the functionality of this thing only working one time. Okay, I'll compile that. We'll ensure that we have no errors. There's one more thing that I need to do here, but before I do it, I want to explain why I'm going to do it. And that explanation is going to be kind of important. I want to show you what happens when we try to interact with this asset. So we need to blueprint something else here. The other thing that we need to blueprint is I'm in the first person character here. So I'm going to go to first person blueprint. We're going to go to the blueprint and I'm going to open the first person character blueprint, which is this guy here. So this contains all of the things used for the first person character. And we're going to go and make our own down here, which is going to be how we're going to interact with these objects. So I'm already using the E button to change the shader on the character to give her that kind of shaded ghost mode kind of thing that you see. So I'm not going to use E for this. I'll use F just because near WASD as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click and keyboard F. And there we go. F from the keyboard. So now when I hit that button, we can go and do what we want to do here. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to trace a line. We want to kind of find out where the camera is. Essentially we want this to come from the character, and since this is in first person, it should come from the camera of the first person. So what I'm going to do, when we press, let's do a line trace by channel. And there we are, line trace by channel. Excuse me. And what we're going to do with the line trace by channel is we're going to look and see whether or not the character is looking at the chest. Also, we want to make sure that the character is close enough to the chest for this to work. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to type correctly, get player camera manager. This manages all the cameras that are contained within the character. We're going to get the camera location, get camera location, so we know where that camera is. And this is going to be where we start our trace. So from wherever the camera is. The end of that trace is going to be where the camera is and also where it's pointing. So let's go take another node out here and let's find out where it's pointing. So let's get forward vector. That's not right. We want the actor. Get actor forward vector. There we go. So we'll find out what direction our character is pointing. The next thing we need to do is we need to figure out how long or how far away from the chest we want the character to be. To do this, we just take our returning vector here, the direction that they're pointing, and we're going to multiply this by a float, vector times float. And now this value here can be how far away from the chest you want to be when it gets activated. Since this is going in metric, in centimeters, this value is in centimeters. So let's do something like 3 meters. So 300. So 300 centimeters away means from 3 meters away, we'll be able to activate this chest. That number is kind of going to be a little wiggly too. It's going to be actually from the camera, which is a little bit behind the character, the first person character. But we'll give that a whirl. The next thing we want to do is we also want to get this from the camera location. So we're going to add that to where the camera is. So now we're getting forward, adding 300 to it, or multiplying the vector by 300, so it gets 300 in length, making it longer. And then we're going to add that to the camera location. So this is pointing out from the camera 300 units. That's where we're going to stop our check. Now, there's going to be a problem with this. I'm going to go draw this for duration so that we can see this thing being drawn on screen here when I do this. And what we want to do is we just want to see whether or not this is going to work. So let's do this. I'm going to take out the out hit. This is what gets hit by the ray trace. And we are going to break the hit result. And we are going to open this up so we can see absolutely everything here that, we can play with. And we're going to come back to this in a moment. What I want to do here is just go here and let's print a string. And in that print, let's grab the actor that's hit and plug that into the string. So all this is going to do is that when we fire off our line, which is going to trace out from the camera, and it hits something, let's find out what it hit and just draw that on the screen. So let's compile this and make sure that this works. And I'll show you the problem that we're going to encounter. So here I am in game. I'm going to need to wait for that Shift F1 to disappear. And when I hit F, you can see there's a red line on screen now. And it went 300 units and then it stopped. I do another one there. Let's do one against the wall. And oh, look, up in the top left. Actually, let's change the duration. This one. Draw time. Oh, no, that should be right. No, it's just the text that's disappearing. Okay, that's fine. Anyway, sorry, that was loud. So if I hit F here, it hit my BP Fortnite wall. If I go to my character mesh, which is also a static mesh, and we fire that off, you can see her name appears. If I go to this wall, big wall, floor, get close enough to this thing, wall 4. So you can see as I hit things, it actually goes and fires off what was hit. We go over to this guy, floor, floor, and those things are being hit. Here's the problem. That's hitting the floor. It's going right through the chest and hitting the floor. Now, the reason it's doing that is that this chest is a skeletal mesh, and the line trace doesn't return skeletal meshes. That means that no matter what, when we go and try to affect this thing, it's not actually going to work. It's going to fire right through it, and we'll never know whether or not we were actually aiming at it and selecting it. So we're going to cheat this a little bit, and this is why I deleted the collision on the original asset. I'm going to go into the blueprint for the asset. Let's go to the viewport so we can see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some additional collision to this. And I'm going to flip it over this way and move my light over. I like looking at this thing from the front. So here's the chest. And what I want to do is I want to add some more collision to this. I want to add something that is not going to render, but will allow me to fire off that node. I'm going to add a component. I'm just going to do a search for box, and I'm going to get a box collision. This is going to give me an object that I can now place inside my asset. Scale down to match the asset, maybe about there. Let's turn the snaps off because they're irritating. And we'll make it big enough to actually encompass this asset. So that's not too bad. I'm going to give it a little bit more height. Go back to the chest here. We'll move this up again. Okay, something like that. So this box collision is going to do a couple of things. First, it's going to provide the collision on the box. So this thing now has collision on it, which is good. Also, if I do my line trace, it should pick up that object. Now, it's not at the moment, so we're going to go double check that we've got this set correctly. So let's go to the box, and let's go check out what we should have its collision set to. So if we go scroll down in the details pane here to collision, I'm going to change the collision to block all, just so everything collides with it. So now if we go back in here, we should actually be able to collide with this thing. So there we go. You can see no, I can't walk through it. And if I fire my trace now, you can see that it says BP BL chest. So it's actually hitting the collision box and returning that value to us. So beautiful. That now works the way that we want it to. So again, let's go to the first person player thing here. So now that we know that this is working, we can delete these guys. And let's tell it what we want it to do when we hit that chest. So first, let's find out if it actually hit anything. Again, we're going to do a check against a branch, against a bool, and the line trace will actually provide the true or false for us. So now, if it hits something, we can do the test. The next thing we're going to do is we need to launch back into this blueprint and fire off the open chest. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to cast this. So I'm going to pull out from true, and we're going to cast to BP chest. Again, BP, BL for Borderlands and chest. Let's make sure that the object that's cast is our hit actor, like so. And all we're going to do now is we're going to tell this to go fire off the node that we wanted to fire from. So we're going to pull out from cast, and we are going to say, let's go find out what we name that node, open chest. So in that blueprint, let's go opened chest. Let's use the BPBL chest as the target and compile this. So what this should do now is, again, if we go over what's happening, this should do a trace from our camera to our character, check to see whether or not it hit anything, and if it did hit something, true, it's going to check what actor it hit, cast that actor into the chest, and then just fire off the custom node called open chest, playing through this sequence. With all of these things compiled, we can go and check to see whether or not this is actually working. So, step number 1. I still have the line trace turned on, so we're still going to see it in here. So I'm going to hit play. And again, if I hit F, we should see the laser beams come out of the character. If I walk over to the chest and I hit F, there we go. The chest opens, turns red, and I can't fire it off again. Let's go get rid of our drawing here. We're going to not worry about drawing the debug. We can compile that. Now, let's go and put a few more of these things in here. So, this one. And, let's delete. Well, no, we can keep that one. This one. And, this one. And let's go see if indeed our dynamic material system is working correctly. That one opens. Oh. I didn't grab the blueprint. These are skeletal meshes. The blueprint is back here. So let's go place a few of these things inside the world here. So let's rotate this. Let's turn the snaps back on now. So yes, yes, and yes. We'll rotate this 90 degrees. And we'll go seat it against the wall here. Put it maybe there. We can leave that one where it is. Let's make a copy over here. Let's bring another one in, put it against that wall. And then let's hit play and go see if this works. So here we are in game. And I walk over to the chest and I hit F and it opens. And then I can put my loot inside there. The other chests haven't been modified. That one opens. That one opens. And that one opens. And so there, they actually all work exactly the way that I wanted them to. And they're giving me the functionality that we kind of see inside of Borderlands. Now, there's one more thing that we can do with this that will make it a little bit easier on both level design as well as making this system go a little bit further. So, as I mentioned earlier on, in Borderlands, there are washing machines and mailboxes and even little piles of crap, all of which have something green, something red, and the ability to play an animation and do something. Well, we can set up our blueprint to give us the ability to do that. So one of the things that we could do is inside of the construction script, we could actually tell it, instead of using chest low, we could actually make a randomizer here that'll pick from a list of skeletal meshes and put them all in. So that way, every time you place one of these things in the world, it'll change what mesh it is. So you put the first one down, you get a mailbox. Put the second one down, you get this chest. The third one down, you get a washing machine. The next one, a fridge. The next one, a pile of crap. Every single one of them, as you manipulate it through the world, it'll just keep changing what that mesh is. So we can actually go and assign a different static mesh or a different skeletal mesh to this node every time it's placed. I'm not going to bother doing that because I haven't got any more static meshes or skeletal meshes that I made. Just this one chest. And so that is as far as I can take this system. But you can see that it's going to work quite nicely here. And we now have chests that can open. And again, red lights telling us like, hey, you can't open these things anymore. And then that's about it. And so, yeah, we now have an entire system kind of built. All right. That's going to conclude this tiny little stream here. It's only been about an hour or so. Not really long to set up one of these things. Again, granted, I did do all of the modeling and all of the texturing, behind the scenes. And so you weren't, subjected to that side of things. But you do see how this can work. In terms of doing something in this way. And so I hope this has been useful and something that you're interested in. Again, if you have any ideas or questions down the road to ask for things that you would like to see in Unreal put together, by all means, don't hesitate to throw me a line and throw a request in, and I'll put a little demo example for you. In fact, that's kind of everything that's what this little map is made up of. Hey, Nexids, how you doing? And so yeah, that's kind of what this little map guy is for here. We are just building, little requests along the way. So as people are looking for help with doing any one particular thing, I just kind of keep putting new little blueprints and things together in here. And so I'll eventually broaden this map out and get a lot more going on here. But this will give you a little bit of the core functionality of how this stuff works. And so if you've got any requests, if there's anything you're trying to figure out how to do, or something that you'd like to see done, and by all means, don't hesitate to ask and put in a request. And I'll try to put together a video based on that content. Without requests, I kind of just keep pulling these things out of midair, making sure that I end up with something that is going to be interesting and useful. And so I really do rely on you guys for making sure that the content you see is something that is of use to you. Other than that, the only other thing that I wanted to mention is that I have a Patreon page where I have people like you, people that watch the stream, and people that are interested in game design and game development, where you can come support me and help me make more of these videos, help me make more content like this. And if you are interested in that, you can see at the top and bottom of the screen here, I've got some annotations that you can see. So feel free to come and check out my Patreon page. You can find that at patreon.com/TurnerMade. And for as little as $1 a month, you can help support making these videos a reality. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for participating, and we'll see you next time.